Thank you. Well, just let's start off with a story, right? That's how we go storytelling. Wait for a few minutes or a few seconds, people find a place, and I'll take you to this story of, well, once upon a time. That's how the most stories start, right? Once upon a time in a town not so far away from here, probably not so long ago as well, there was this family living in a cottage. You might recognize this as this one. It's, oh, sorry. Oh, that's where my story goes. Um, Typical Lithuanian cottage. At least that's what I thought, and that's what the AI image generation also thought. Walls of wood, red, clay tiles on the roof, and there's a garden with flowers and plants. And in that garden, there are growing vegetables like onions, carrots, maybe some corn, and there are chickens walking around and some geese. And in that house with the nice white window frames and the nice wooden entrance, there's living a family of four. It's Lena, who's a woman, with her husband, Philip, and two kids, a boy and a girl. And it's a stressful life because, well, they have to struggle to survive and work hard. And every morning when the kids wake up and have to go to school, Lena has to make breakfast. Usually porridge, but sometimes she makes pancakes. Philip likes pancakes a lot. And the kids like them as well. And then when the kids are brought to school or set up, their stress begins because they have to go to their work as well and packing up their laptops because Lena, she's a software manager at a company somewhere in Vilnius. And Philip, he's a management position somewhere at a startup. And then the journey begins. And every morning, Lena thinks she kind of feels guilty. She wants to accomplish something and she doesn't get it right. And she said, I need to have a solution for my problem. And well, we're getting there later in that solution. So that's where we go. A little bit about myself before we continue. I'm Danny Higler. I'm an agile coach, DevOps coach for a company called Humanity. I'm living in the Netherlands with my family. Love the outdoors. My hobby is painting miniatures, D&D, Warhammer, playing tabletop games a lot. It's fun. I like it. And that's also about stories. But besides liking stories, I have to make money. I'm also a software engineer or former software engineer turned into an agile coach or DevOps coach, or actually I want to call it more flow and communication optimizer because that's what we do. I started my career in the Royal Dutch Navy when I was 17 years old, working in the engine rooms of a ship. And later I realized, I thought, this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. But what should I do? I want to do something with computers. That's really what I like to do. So the closest thing, I didn't have any classification. Closest thing I could find was a job at a telecom company selling mobile phones. And I was quite handy with computers, doing some programming myself. And suddenly there was the opportunity to go for a bachelor's degree via the telecom company on computer science. I thought, yes, I sign up for that. Unfortunately, my manager supported me. She said, yes, you should do that. But the rest of the company said, sorry, you don't have the right classifications. We can't send you to that course. And I was kind of feeling bad about it. But my manager fought for me and eventually I could do it. And actually somebody said, and that gives you about an indication of the time, wow, this internet thing, that's going to get huge. You might spend some interest in that and spend some time on discovering internet related topics. And that's how my engineering career started. As a software career, a software engineer, .NET started with that. Moved my way up, was CTO from a few startups. I don't know how it happened, but it happened. Actually a few successful ones. And finally ending up 8 years ago as this DevOps coach. So that's what I do, what I am. Before we continue, there's a disclaimer on the presentation that I'm an engineer with a passion for stories and people and interactions, communication. I'm not a neuroscientist. Some of my colleagues are, I'm not. So whatever I show you or tell you about stories and what I do in your brain, it's based on my or experiences, not on any scientific proof or study from my side. It's just, it works for me. I have some lung issues at the moment. So every now and then I need to take some water. What's also good to mention is, before we continue, most of the images I use are generated by Midjourney, the bot. Experiment to see if that works. Creating presentations with AI. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you'll find it out. We're surrounded by stories all the time, even when back in the Ice Age, where cavemen were creating stories on the walls of caves. They were creating great drawings, probably to tell stories and share stories with their community. Later on, when we went to stone carvings and even books, and these days we are also surrounded by stories. If you play a video game, there's a good story in it. I think a good story really carries a video game. We have movies, stories, theater, even campfires or sit-togethers where we share stories and tell stories to each other. It's really, we are surrounded by stories everywhere, except work. Sorry. Where I work, or a lot of the clients I work at, there are not a lot of stories. Well, they have stories and they call it user stories. And as an agile coach, I'm trying to explain that concept to them. But they usually use stories like this. As the director of somebody, he would like to have the same account animations as a competitor before next week so they can present it to the board. It's not really sexy, entertaining. It doesn't grab me. Or another one. This was a true one, actually. The other one, they're all three true. As a Scrum team, we need to attend the daily Scrum stand-up, so we won't miss any updates from our Scrum Master. Well, that's, you might call it a user story, but it's not. And as a product owner, I need to have a system to avoid double reservations, so the company won't lose any money on compensating our users. It's called stories, but there aren't really, right? Who recognize this? Oh, yeah, some people do. So, besides this presentation about storytelling, user stories should be things to accomplish, not tasks to do. That's on a side note. So what did I experience during the last 12 years doing this work as a coach or team leader? That work is often unclear. It's incomplete, not client focused. We don't really get it. And I think, Carolina, I see you sitting in the audience. You had a great presentation yesterday where you introduced the need for good requirements. They're often missing. Requirements are missing or not complete or very narrowed. Hey, you need to do this, go fix, without understanding the whole background. So I think that in an organization, understanding the background of a story, the vision, where do you want to go, that's the most important thing. Well, what do you have more here? Missing story, deadlines, ad hoc work. Yeah, we always in a rush, right? We always have to finish something at a certain date. We don't have any time to do a deep dive. We don't have any time to do a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve or trying to do. So I experienced that a lot. And I was thinking already some years ago, how can I solve this? I want to have people making, well, communicating better, talking about what should we do, expressing the vision of the organization or where do you want to go with the team, maybe even. And I realized that stories might be the trick to do that. So storytelling can help us to get, for me at least, a more complete view, discover risks, different paths we can do, for who are we doing the work. So by telling and creating a story around the work we want to do, we make it more complete. We make it more tangible. And if it's complete and tangible, people will recognize it and it starts to live for them. So building a story to live is different than a bunch of incomplete requirements which are thrown over the wall and you have to fix it. If you do that as a team, if you build that story as a team together you grow, right? Together you create that understanding of what is it that we're trying to achieve, what is it, for who are we doing it, what's the value we deliver, what are the risks which are there, which different paths can we have. So creating insights in work by building a story. And you can do that on all levels of the organization. Not only on team level, where we say, hey, we have developers, testers working together, shift left already, right? Where we say, hey, testers be included or everybody be included from the start of the process. So let's start building that story together. Also on management level, leadership level, where we say, hey, we have a vision we want to do, we have a message, let's build stories around it. It always works better. At least for me it does. So what does it do with stories? Who watches television? Probably a lot of people watch television. You see a car commercial. And why does that car commercial trigger us so much? Why is it a story? Not about the facts of the car, because hey, the measurements and the amount of horsepower, we're not really interested in that. So if we tell a story, the brain gets activated, and people think, oh, they can relate to it. They have a desire and a wish, and it will be built into that story. So that's one of the reasons car advertisements and a lot of other ones are really about telling a story instead of sharing the stupid, dull facts. We need them as well, the facts, but we can look them up after we are triggered. So stories really trigger the brain more than factual reporting. It's another example. Any idea which commercial this is? Coffee, Nespresso, yeah. Actually, if you look at those commercials, they tell nothing about the coffee. It's just an experience they're sharing. It's a nice story to tell. We hire some famous actors. I know the left one and the right one and the middle, I don't know. And we share that story so people get engaged with the brand again. So storytelling everywhere around us. Sorry for the coughing, it's probably. So I like telling stories. And when I discuss this with my colleagues at Humanity and also the clients, years ago, a colleague of mine came up with this quote, and he said, the detour via the metaphor is usually faster. And I thought about it, and I think, yeah, you're right. If you talk about explaining things, making things more clear, metaphors work, because you can relate to something that everybody understands without any deep technical knowledge, and some basic principles can be completed. Who was at a keynote yesterday, the opening keynote of Finn? Remember the cupcakes or the muffins? Great metaphor, right? He baked them himself, I think, together with his kids. But the metaphor of how can we get testing into our process, and he used the metaphor of the cupcake. How can we get chocolate all the way through our cupcake? So brilliant metaphor. I liked it a lot. Somebody's using metaphors a lot in their work. Yeah, cool. Some examples maybe. That person. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. It works like that with physics. I thought I was a smart guy until I worked at ASML and they explained me the physics of the machines they're building. And and then they used a metaphor and I thought, oh, now I understand it. I get the concept there. So it really helps to simplify things. It helps to create understanding. And that's what you want, right? Common shared understanding in that. So how does that go then? How did I start telling stories? Because if you're in an organization and you say, hey, let's build a story or let's create a story together, these are some of the reactions I got. It's not your Dungeons and Dragons club, right? We're here not to tell stories. We're here to deliver actual work. So but a lot of the people in the teams are actually playing D&D, so it might be a good idea actually to do that. That's remark was for me also the reason to start having conversations, coaching conversations with people who are a bit shy or reluctant. And I said, well, you play Magic? I said, yes, bring a Magic deck, we play a game, and in that game we have a discussion about work, and that actually works. So another tip there. Another one I got was, hey, yeah, storytelling, that's nice. We do a planning session. Can we do it in the last 10 minutes? We create a story and then we're done. No, it doesn't really work like that. You need to facilitate it. You need to work with it. You need to build it up. And actually, you also need to understand what are the building blocks of a story. So let's go to the story path. And if you look at stories and you do more of a deep dive into storytelling, you will discover there lots of different formats, constructs you can use. The most commonly one is what we call the hero's journey, and that's this one. But there are way more formats you could see. The story part of the hero's journey is actually, if you remember it and if you think about it, you can recognize it in almost every story being told. Actually, almost every presentation here at the summit or at the conference is following. Maybe they do it aware or unaware, but they're following this path. It starts with a hero. And the hero, he has a desire. He or she has a wish, something that person wants or needs, or think, hey, this is getting better. So, Ashish, I was just witnessing the start of your presentation, and you're the hero. You have a problem. You need to solve something. How do you do that? So that's how every story starts. If you look at Disney movies, there's always a hero with a desire. Look at any other movie or book, there's a hero. And a hero needs support. A hero needs people or systems or environments that support them, that gets them where they want to be. That's a good one. But, like in every good story, we also have the bad people, the villains. My drawing skills, somebody might recognize them. Matrix, Mr. Anderson, I tried to replicate them. Not sure if it worked. But those are the things that are working against you. And we can call them risks, we can call them enemies, we can call them unforeseen circumstances, but what's working against you? So that's a good one. And what we have, usually our hero gets, well, diminished by all the pushback from the enemy saying, that's not going to work. Just like I had when I wanted to sign up for this Bachelor Computer Sciences at the telecom company. My enemies was the rest of the organization, and they were pushing me back. It made me feel bad. But luckily, there was a twist where my manager came in and said, hey, Danny, I'm going to help you. And the twists, the unforeseen moments, the different paths we can follow, that's always part of the journey. If you look at any movie, anything, there's always one or more twists. Sometimes there's a loop of twists, could also be. But something happens and that brings us to the end. We always hope it's a happy end, but it doesn't have to be like that. Any questions so far? Because I realized this presentation is just before lunch. So if I ask for questions right after the presentation, everybody wants to go off. So are there any questions so far? No? No?
Thought I saw a hand in the back, didn't I? No? There's a
No.
bag to get, right? So good
Carolina has a
questions.
question.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's just my laptop with a touchscreen and a pen.
So the question was, is it how technical, right? It was a good question. So for the rest, if you have good questions, you get a goodie bag. And I looked inside, you really want one. So here, you got the first goodie bag already.
Yay.
Sorry, I'm going to sit down again, Danny.
Yeah, sure.
It's your show.
I continue. No, that's no problem. And it gives me a moment to get my bread back. So that's building cleverly, I thought. So let's go back to the story. And let's go back to a story of Lena, who's living in this beautiful house together with her husband, Philip. You might remember that. And she had a desire. She was always busy working and have to bring the kids to school, go back to work. And she said, my children love stories. They need them before they go to sleep. But she's too busy, right, to survive in a society, making a career. So she kind of feels guilty. But she said, I have an idea. I want a device that tells storybooks to the kids and make animations with it, like this old-fashioned picture books you might know as a young kid, or maybe if you have kids, you read them. As she said, I want a storybook animation device, and I'm calling it SAD. Might be a sad thing to do, but yeah. So that's what she needs. And, well, what do you want? You want supporters. So every story has to support us. And who's supporting Lena here? Of course, the kids, because, hey, finally, we get some attention and we get a bedtime story to be read. So that's fun. Well, the Acme Capital Investment Fund said, yes, we also believe it. That's a commercial opportunity for us because there are more parents like Lena and Philip. So we're going to support you. We really endeavor you to go through. Set will be the next best thing since Netflix. We need this. All the other parents, or at least a lot of the parents in the world, said, yes, this is going to be cool. So more supporters for Lena and her product. Well, Acme AI, the corporation, said, well, our APIs can support this. So, well, let's go ahead. And Lena was happy. She had supporters finally working on a product, making maybe even some prototypes already. But what happens and what we introduced were the enemies. Devices should not read stories for our kids. Some other group of parents said that. Set might base the stories on existing content. How about compensation? That's a group of authors speaking there. The stories might contain content not suited for kids. So we need to review any story that's going to be published to the kids. But the idea was to generate them on the fly. So I don't know. And Set will be out of control and brainwash our kids and taking over kids' world. So if you look at this, the enemies and also the supporters, in work, this will be our stakeholders who will benefit from the work what we do, what we have. How will they benefit from it? When will they be happy? How should we include them? So by creating a story and focusing on supporters, you will identify your stakeholders and more importantly, your end users. For who are you doing this and why do they need it? So that's a good one. If our stakeholders are the supporters, who are the enemies? Could be stakeholders as well. But the risks we have. Maybe some stakeholders are part of the risk, but come up with financial risks or legal risks, security risks. Maybe people don't want the feature. So sitting down with a team or a group of people thinking about the enemies in the story gives you the opportunity to think about, hey, what are the risks we're running into? What are the risks we're needing there? So that's a good thing to practice. Then we have twists, and of course, Lena, there are lots of twists in the story because what happened there is that, well, one of the scenarios I thought about was, hey, Set will produce stories which are okay and reviewed on the fly by another AI. Not sure if that's a good thing, but that's the scenario they had discovered. That could happen. Set spins out of control and starts creating H.P. Lovecraft-inspired stories. Really love them, but not sure if they're good as a bedtime story for kids. But it could happen. Set starts creating one-of-one copies of original content. So actually it's reproducing Disney movies, or well, that's also not what we want. Or, hey, the test results show that the kids drop their phone, start consuming more stories, even encourage them to start reading even better, and they have a better sleep pattern. So that's, well, the happy flow we are creating. So by thinking about these twists, you might think about your different scenarios, your different paths in your solution or applications you're developing and testing. Not forget, all testers here. So that really helps you there, could help you. Any other twists which can come up? Maybe somebody saw this and thought, oh, that's an interesting one. Sorry?
Maybe destructive thoughts.
Yeah, could be.
About the idea.
That's a good one. Anyway, if anybody wants to build a Set solution, just include me and credit me on the, I don't know, somewhere. So, and then we have the ending, because yes, Lena's happy. Good things happen. We're all in a good place now. So yeah, done or not. Do all of your test scenarios have a happy ending? No. So sometimes this is what we also want. So discover what are the different endings we can have. Can we have happy endings or less successful endings? And by doing that and following this simple path, but actually thinking with a group of people about all the elements which are in there, you build a story and you look at your work from a different angle. You're trying to create a metaphor maybe, or maybe you use it as a real world scenario. Like I worked at an e-commerce company and they were thinking about, hey, we have three, well, personas, and probably you all heard about personas and use cases. And they said, well, our three personas are a male, 40s, just divorced. The second persona we have, actually it's a couple. With a very small child, just a few weeks old. And the third persona, career woman, mid-20s. So how are we going to address that? And what I did, and it's easy because it's an e-commerce shop with housing accessories, they actually built 3 living rooms in the office. Just office locations. They threw the developers out and said, hey, this is going to be living room 1, 2, and 3. They hired actors, they just invited people from the company, and they start creating scenarios and stories from within that living room. Some improvisation actors were hired to challenge the teams, but it's really, they came up with great stories on that one. So creating an environment where that's possible, big opportunity. But how do you do that? How do you start? So anyway, parts and twists, there's your story, told about that. Stories can grow from simple stories all the way to a complete book with chapters. And you can, if you want, if a story starts to live in an organization, foster it, grow it, create posters or t-shirts, but it's make it come alive. That's what you want to do. Visualization really helps. I can't draw, but well, everybody recognizes this, so that's a good one. Visualization helps a lot in bringing something to life. Not only stories, but also if you have a more, well, test scenarios and drawing it and working together helps. Think about stories that work like a story can create different insights, helping you to develop and test better suited, appreciated solutions. So think about work as a story. And it's a team activity. And a team activity can be your development team, testing team, corporate of a product team, doesn't really matter, but you need some facilitation there. So what flavors do you have in facilitation of creating stories? First one, really simple. Just create a story part, following the part, sit down with a team, draw the part, and start filling in the blanks. Use Miro, use sticky notes, use drawings, put the part somewhere and start filling it in. Who's our hero? Who are the supporters? What are the risks we have? What are the possible twists? And make it an interactive workshop. This usually works. This is good. This is acceptable. A lot of people like to do this. There's not a lot of resistance, but sometimes you want to do a bit more of a deep dive or having a different approach just because it suits that team better. So one of the things you can do is use AI for it. I just use this prompt. Give me a drawing, generating a drawing, and this can help us to build also an environment or a story. Some other prompt I use here is create 3 supporters as persons or systems in a story where the hero wants to build an AI tool to generate, and visualize bedtime stories. I used Bart for this one, and it came back with 3 supporters. The AI mentor, oh, that's cool. Child storyteller, and a community of parents. So I used some of those examples generated by AI, also in my own examples here. I also asked the same story, give me the enemies. So the greedy corporation, AI skeptical people, outdated educational system, who's against using technology to educate kids. So that could also be an option. So using AI to your benefit could actually really help here. One of the other things I did, only twice I have to admit it, but I liked it so much, is that actually going Dungeons and Dragons style, D&D. Who's playing D&D? Nice. Get a dungeon master, get a DM, get some dice, get some paper and start filling in. I had a product owner working as a dungeon master, and for those of you who don't know, in the D&D game it's about creating stories together and having adventures. So you need somebody who can set up the first story and the rest will kind of follow along the way. And there's actually a part followed. So one of the product owners was an active DM and really facilitated the sessions for the team. And the team liked it. And a lot of things came up along the way. So one of the phrases was, bring your D20 and we'll figure it out. And that's a nice one to start there. Use your chest for a risk map. So, hey, how do we do this? And the check is you have to roll a certain number, and the higher the number is, the lower the possibility you will succeed. And by putting those numbers on the risks we identified, we also could build this risk map. So that's a nice thing to do as well. Also, images generated by AI. One of the last practices I want to share with you, use story cubes. Anybody familiar with story cubes? Few people do. I have them here if you want to see them. Actually, just regular dice, but with pictures instead of numbers. And you can throw them and there's an image showing up, and that image can inspire you to tell the story. It's great activity to do with your team, but also great activity to do with your kids. Just throw some dice and start telling stories. Use them. That's also a possibility you have. Cool. So in short, stories, they trigger the creative thinking, create commitment. If you follow the path, and I just see that, oh no, that's not a spelling mistake, sorry. If you follow the path, you can actually quite simple start creating the story, facilitate it well, and make sure you share the story. Make sure you bring it out to the world. If you're creating a vision for a product, share it. If you're creating a complicated story or a solution to fix, share it with the rest of the teams, the rest of the world. I think that's it for now.